What is going wrong with Chelsea and Enzo Maresca? Welcome back to the channel today. Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Thank you for coming along to come drive with me again. And yeah, we're going to get straight into this. So today I'm going to go into what's going wrong with Chelsea and what's Enzo Maresca kind of doing. Like, not to be blunt about it, but he's doing some very odd stuff, which even I know Chelsea fans are kind of questioning why he's even thinking to do the things he's doing. It's hard way to start with this, to be honest. Right, we'll start with where I think it started going wrong for Chelsea. And obviously in the first part of the season it was all going well for them. They were flying through the league. They had the potential to go top of the table around Christmas if they'd won. I can't remember who they were meant to play, but yeah, they could have gone top basically at Christmas. And Maresca came out and said, we're not here to win the league, we just want Europe. And since then has just fallen apart for them. They're like one of the most out of form teams outside of the relegation teams in the whole league right now. They can't seem to score a goal basically at times. I know they've had injury issues. They've also got Nicholas Jackson out injured, Fofana just coming back. But you've spent £1.5 billion. You get no sympathy when it comes to injuries. I've seen the other day with all the players they've signed now, including the new signings they've got, I think they've got the equivalent of, it's about 90 players on their books if you include like the like 123s and stuff. 90 players on your books. That's insane. Your squad's 23. Like, that's mental you have that many. And then you're telling me about you have injury issues. Nah. Because you know what it is? About 30 of them are probably out on loan. And about half of those are probably first team players out on loan. So they don't get much sympathy when it comes to injuries. Partially because of how much they spent. The other part of it is because of how Maresca handled the squad, which he got a lot of praise for at the start of the season. He was very cutthroat with who he wanted, who he didn't want. He kicked out Sterling, he's kicked out the Sassy now. And don't get me wrong, I don't think the Sassy's good enough, but he's better than no one. So I think the fact he was so stubborn at the start of the season and was so cutthroat with some players is coming back to bite him a little bit now. I look at like Joao Felix, and he basically said, look, you're just playing European football, that's it. Premier League, you might come off the bench, that's it. I think that it dries up the hunger for players. Because obviously they just go, oh well, I'm just going to play in Europa League then. Like, I don't need to perform that one in the Premier League. It's not going to make a hell of a difference for me. Either way, I'm still going to play on Thursday. And the reason, and obviously when you don't include Cole Palmer, don't get me wrong, I didn't think you should have included Cole Palmer in the Conference League squad. I thought that was a correct decision. But that's an exception because he's an exceptional player and you want him at his best for the Premier League. When you're looking at squad players, you want everyone to be involved and feel like they have a chance of playing in the Premier League in the big games. If they know they're not going to play, you're never going to get the performances out of them. So I don't think he handled that particularly correctly. I didn't like the way he treated Chilwell, Chalobah and Sterling, like making them train with the kids, just completely cutting them off. Chilwell was at the club the whole time but never played in that first half of the season. So whether he was fit, I'm pretty sure he was fit towards the end of that time, towards January. Yeah, I didn't like that, especially in the summer. And now you look at Chalobah, he's obviously had to come back because Chelsea they've had no defenders, so they had to bring him back. And now he's gone and got himself injured. But yeah, I didn't like that treatment of him. But the point was that when they were challenging for the league title supposedly in December, he came out and outrightly said, nah, we're not here for the league title. And while it's probably true that they were never going to actually compete for the title, you never know what happens. And I think to shut it down like that shows a real lack of ambition. I think it's something he's going to have to learn from. Obviously he's still quite a young manager. And it's kind of the opposite approach to what Arteta did this season, where Arteta was like, we're not giving up no matter what. Both, in my opinion, were kind of wrong. So you've got one who's saying we're not giving up when they're about 15 points off the league title, with about 10 games to go, or whatever it was, 11, 12 at that point. That was never going to happen. You know, that was just unrealistic. But obviously he wants to keep going in the league. What Mikel Arteta should have said was, we're going to try and win every single game towards the end of the season, give Liverpool as much to think about as we can, but we know in all likelihood that we're probably not going to make it. But for our own self-respect and self-esteem, we have to do what we can. Because at that point, Tyrus is dead. In December, it was still very much alive, especially for Chelsea. And he's just ruled them out half through the season, saying, nah, we basically said, nah, we don't fancy it. Like, it's the wrong approach to take, I think. And I think it's come back to bite them, because I think the players stepped off the gas a bit. Some players, I look at someone like a Jadon Sancho maybe. He hasn't been performing that well, and to be honest, I probably want to delve into that a little bit at some point. What's going on with Jadon Sancho? I might do a little separate video later on after this about that, because what's going on with him is crazy. It's mental. It's like tennis between two teams that don't want the player. It's like hot potato. Anyway, that's where it set the tone for the rest of the season, I think, back in December. Now, I'm looking at what's happened since. So obviously we've had the injuries. We've touched on their transfer strategy. I think you're looking at someone like Joao Felix gets sent out on loan, which, if he wasn't going to play Nkunku as a striker, Joao Felix should have never left on loan. Even if he wasn't happy, Maresca should have managed it in a way to keep him happy, in case it does happen to Nicholas Jackson. Because you can't rely on one player being fit the whole time. It's shown of Arsenal this season, you know? A couple injuries and you have no one left. So that's again something Maresca's going to have to learn from, I think, because he made a very big mistake there. Well, Joao Felix might not be what they need right now in terms of like the quality of player suited for the Premier League. He would have done a job for them up front. He wasn't playing that badly for them, and now it's basically severed the relationship with Joao Felix, where he doesn't want to be at Chelsea next season after 6 months being there. I think after like his second game at AC Milan, he basically said, look, I want to stay here. And I don't think Milan are going to sign him permanently because of the finances involved, but that's not how you manage a squad. Like, you've had him for 6 months, you're already cutting him off. You're going to make a loss, because you're not going to make a profit. So the whole business plan is they want to make profit on these players. You're not going to make a profit on a player if you only hold them for a year and they don't perform. Like, that's just not how it works. So yeah, I don't agree with that part either. I think the squad management was a bit poor from him in January. I think they let a lot of players go. They didn't bring many in, and it's a bit confusing what they're doing, because I look at even the young stars they're bringing in. Don't get me wrong, I rate some of these young players they've got. You know, Andre Santos in Ligue 1 is absolutely killing it for Strasbourg, and he could be a special player next season. Esteval, from what I've seen, looks unbelievable. But then they've just gone and signed Quenda, who I also rate very highly. But you've got Quenda, and you've got Esteval, you've got Palmer, and you've got Pedro Neto. You've got 4 left-footed players who like to play on the right wing. Neto can play on the left, and Palmer can play on the 10. But my point with Palmer is he often drops in to that right-hand side position. He's playing right 8 for Maresca. So it doesn't make much sense to have Quenda and Esteval. You have 2 youngsters fighting for the same position, and it almost indicates to me that Noni Madueke is going to get sold this summer, which he could be quite unfortunate to. I don't necessarily rate Madueke that highly. I think he's quite overrated as a player. I don't think he offers that much going forward. I think he's alright. I think he's quick, but I don't necessarily rate him. in the highest esteem. So it's interesting how they're going to fit all these players in next season. I know they've signed another midfielder as well, Esuogo, I think his name is. I'm definitely saying that wrong, but also from Sporting. And then you've done that, which I'm going to assume is cover from Caicedo, so he can kind of grow as well at the same time. But Chelsea have got so many young players in their squad, and they've got no seniority. I think I've seen like the senior players when they were going for a rough patch in February. They got to go for a meeting. It was like Reece James, Cole Palmer, and I think what's the keeper's name? Bettinelli, I think it is. They were like 3 of those players that were in the senior like figures at the club. And look at that, you go, Cole Palmer, he's been there for what, a season and a half now, and he's like 21. He's in the senior players. Reece James, I know he's captain, but he's like what, 25 now, and he's barely played over. I don't think he's played 100 games in the Prem. So to have them as senior players leading all these youngsters coming into the squad now, even more youngsters coming in, it's a bit of a concern for me. And then also you've got a young manager, so when it is going wrong like now, there's no one to just put the handbrake on basically and say, look, calm, handbrake like that. Yeah, there's no one to put that handbrake on and get them to relax and go back to basics. If anything, I think they're getting worse, because Maresca is starting to overcomplicate things. Obviously I watched the Arsenal-Chelsea game, and so we'll get onto this part now about positionings and players and how he's been using them. Alright, so watching the Arsenal game, my mate's a Chelsea fan, and he literally counts out how many players for Chelsea are playing in the wrong positions on the pitch. And I think we counted 6 players were out of position on the pitch. So we had Reece James in midfield, you had Colwell was the right centre back, you had Sancho on the right, you had Pedro Neto up front, you had Nkunku on the left, and you had who's playing right back? Fofana right back. You had 6 players, and the worst part about it was every single player in that starting 11 that was out of position could have moved around to be in position. Like, they were all on the pitch. You wouldn't have to make a change. Like, you could have just put them in the actual positions and started them, and you would have had like enough you would have had the perfect amount of players, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe if you needed to get rid of someone, it was like, I think maybe the left centre back you could have got rid of whoever it was that day. I can't remember for the life of me now. I can't remember for the life of me who the left centre back was that day. Maybe it was him, and you put in a midfielder. That might have been the one change. But it's just so weird. Like this Reece James midfielder thing, it's shoehorned in now. It's like Trent. It's like Trent in midfield for England. It's just to get him in, and I don't understand why he's shoehorning him into midfield. He can just put him at right back. And if he wants to come into midfield, he can come into midfield. It's literally like he did with Caicedo. It makes no sense to start him in the middle. He is not a 6. He can do it to an alright level, but if you want to play in Europe and compete for titles and whatever, Reece James in midfield is not what you want to be doing. You've literally spent money on Lavia and Caicedo. You've got Enzo. Like, he's just taken up another spot in the midfield when he's already an exceptional right back. He might not be as good as he was because he might have lost maybe yard of pace or whatever it is. He needs to get back to his level he was at before. But I think Reece James is an out-and-out right back. Is arguably one top 3 right backs in the world on his day, but we haven't seen his day in about 5 years, maybe less. Probably no, 3 years. Then I've been a bit harsh there. About 3 years we haven't seen him on his day for. So I just think he's overcomplicated. It reminds me of Pep in the Champions League when he was at City at first, for the first few years. and he was trying really weird stuff, like mix it, like he'd start like Gabby Jesus on the right wing and drop like Sterling or something like that. I remember the final against Chelsea, dropped Rodri and played Gundogan in the 6, and it just didn't work. Like he would try really mad stuff in the Champions League, and it would just never work. And lo and behold, the one time when he didn't try and do something in the Champions League, when they had Erling Haaland up front, they had Grealish on the left, they had De Bruyne, and they just kept it relatively simple for Guardiola. They won it. Sometimes football's a lot more simple than it looks. In terms of the situation they find themselves in now, obviously with João Felix gone, how would they fix it in this current moment? Obviously you've got Cole Palmer out of form. I think he's almost been, not misprofiled, but Maresca, because he's an exceptional player and he can play in that right side 8 role, and I actually do like him there. I just think the tactics of the team are slowing him down and the way he can play, and he's missing Jackson in that 11 position, sorry, in the striker position. I think if you're looking to fix it now, the players you've got available, it's very tricky. You haven't got many options. I don't like Neto up front. I don't understand it. I think Cole Palmer can play in the false 9. He's done it before. He did it under Poch, and he can clearly do it. Come on, mate. Sorry, cyclists everywhere. It feels like I'm in Amsterdam. If anyone's been to Amsterdam, you know what I mean with cyclists everywhere. Oh god. Yes. Go on, turn, mate. Anyway, yes. So, I've got a bloody motorbike as well. London is a nightmare. Do not drive in London if you don't have to. Anyway, Cole Palmer, false 9, my point. You've got no striking options, and Nkunku's not working out. I think you have to look at moving Nkunku on in the summer, because it's just not working with him. I think it's not his fault with Nkunku in a way, because he's not a striker. Like, he's just not a striker. He's been misprofiled as a striker. He's now turned on the left wing. It's what we would call around Deuter, or he's a shadow striker in FM, you know. He plays off the striker, and he does it very well. He did it for Leipzig very well. He got goals and assists for them. So, but his issue is Cole Palmer's in this team, and that's what that's the position he needs. So he's just not going to get that. So it was never going to work there. He got unfortunate there. But now he's been played as a striker, and it hasn't worked. He looked good in the start of the season, come off the bench, and starting games in the Premier League is very different with the physicality of the league. So I think the best option for me personally is to put Cole Palmer in the false 9. I think you need Cole Palmer in the 9. I think you need runners in behind him. That's the thing. If you're gonna have Palmer in the 9, you need to be able to make sure you have people running off him, because obviously he's not gonna make all the runs in behind. And if anything, you want him to pick out the runs in behind. I think he's intelligent enough to play that position, and he's got that football IQ to be able to drop into spaces and play that ball in behind, or create space for others. I think it would free up a place in the midfield as well. I don't necessarily think Enzo's amazing. Right, stay in your cycle lane, mate. But while I don't think Enzo's amazing, I do rate him to an extent. And sorry guys, let me just figure out what's going on there. London traffic, like I said. Anyway, yeah, you could have Enzo in the midfield. Then he'd get more responsibility as a creative outlet, so it might actually bring a better player out of him. Lavia's fit. I think Lavia and Caicedo as a midfield duo, like as a double pivot, is one of the best partnerships you can probably find in the league. So I do think that's a way they can look around it. I think this wingers you have to play would have to be Pedro Neto, and I don't necessarily like Jadon Sancho playing on left wing. We won't be running them behind that much. I don't know. I think Madueke is out now, so that position's a bit of a conundrum, I'd say. The other alternative is potentially to try and Nkunku back up there. You put Nkunku back up there, you play Palmer out on the right potentially, play Reece James or Malo Gusto as an orthodox right back overlapping at Palmer, give him the space in that inside channel where he won't get picked up by the midfielder straight away and he'll become an extra body in that midfield. So I'm getting too much in depth with these tactics, but I find it really interesting trying to break down what he's been trying to do. Yeah, the left wing is definitely an issue for Chelsea though. I don't necessarily like Sancho there because he wants it to feet all the time. Like, he's not going to run in behind for this system, and I think that's what this system needs. So potentially you could do Nkunku, Palmer, Neto, which might actually be their best front three. Whether he trusts Nkunku to do that role, I don't know. I don't think he does. But if that's the case, then he's got to find alternatives that he does trust, because I'm not seeing wingers right now that are coming in for him. And after all this money they've spent, I look at that Garnacho link with Chelsea. I actually did like the link. I understand why they were doing it. I understand that they've got a lot of wingers on their books, but he would have been their best winger. I don't know, I can't remember what show it was. I think it was it the Club maybe, where they were saying that's mental to say he's their best winger. No, it's Wilfried Fellas. Wilfried Fellas were saying it's mental to say he's their best winger. Like, that's an outrageous statement. It's like, I don't think it is. As a winger, to be like an effective winger in the Premier League, you need to have pace. I think the days are gone with slow wingers in the Prem. Like, you don't see it working nowadays, unless they're operating as a false winger, like they're playing an inside 8 position as a winger, like Bernardo Silva would do sometimes with Man City, to create an extra body in midfield, like I would say Cole Palmer would do for Chelsea. Unless they're doing that, I think you have to have pace as a winger, and that's why I think Sancho just won't work for Chelsea. I just don't think it will work, because it's already crowded enough with all the midfielders they've got in there, and the inverted fullbacks and what have you. Yeah, I just think he needs to. I think the international break is coming at a perfect time for him, where he can reset everything and work around. He's had Cole Palmer off now, out injured supposedly. Never, but anyway. Yeah, he needs to reset it now, and he needs to be thinking about these fullbacks. I think a key thing is these fullbacks. Sorting those positions out, just get them in the right positions, the players. Start from there, and then you can tweak it how you want. I think just get them in their strong positions, make sure they're comfortable, because if a player's not comfortable in their position, they're not going to perform to their best abilities. You're seeing it with Ruben Amorim at Man United. Players aren't entirely comfortable with the system he wants to play, but obviously he's trying to train them into it so that, well, he's trying to train them into it so that he knows who he wants to keep in the future. Maresca has to keep these players because of how long their contracts are, and if they don't work out, their value goes down. He ends up losing his job because he's losing value for the club. They're a business-run club now, so he has to work with these players. And the other thing with Amorim is, compared to Maresca, Amorim's system is very much his system. Like, he has proof that it works. Maresca, I look at it and I go, you had a very similar thing with Leicester, and Leicester fans warned Chelsea fans about the second half of the season syndrome. It's only second half. He had the same thing with Leicester, where he was top of the league, flying first half, and then it kind of just fell away in the second half of the season, and they limped over the finish line in the end for promotion and winning the championship. They just limped over the line. So I think that's the basics. He's just got to go back to basics for now, and he's just got to finish the season strong, because I do think there's a world in which he could lose his job in the end of the season. You look at it with Poch, and he's finished the season really strongly after struggling at first. Maresca started strongly and finished. It's going to finish weak at this rate, and I think he needs like 15 points in the final 10 to equal Poch's points tally from last season. There's no guarantee he reaches that. It's quite an understatement to say. I've done my predictor on my results for the season basically, and Chelsea have a tricky run coming up. And their final four is against, like, I think it's against Liverpool, United, Forest and Newcastle, I want to say, as their final four games. So if they don't pick it up soon, they will struggle to end the season, and they might, I think they'll fall out of the European spots, personally. I've actually got them finishing in 9th right now. It's probably a bit too far down, but I think that's just how much of a mess I think they're in right now. With the injuries they have, Jackson coming back might help them a bit. I think he's coming back in April, so they might actually recover a bit. But they just look off it. They look the shadow of the team when we played, the team we played at Stamford Bridge back in whatever it was, November, December. They looked a shell of that team, and I'd be a bit worried as a Chelsea fan how you're going to end the season in these final 10 games. I think the dip has come a bit too early in the season, and they're going to struggle to pick it back up without, well, they haven't got any players to actually bring it back up. So yeah, I think, should he have the job next season is a different question. I give my thoughts on how he could fix it, I think, potentially, but what do I know? I'm not a manager. I just find this as a hobby. I like the idea of management and the tactics behind it, but I've got nothing. First of all, I've got no ball in this game. Like, I don't care about Chelsea really. I just find it interesting to see how he's trying to change things around, which don't need tinkering. Like, he's tinkered with stuff which just doesn't really need to be tinkered with. So I'm intrigued to see if he does go back on what he's been doing and kind of resets it a bit. And if he doesn't, how he plans to change their fortunes will be interesting. Maybe he goes to a 3-back or something like that, because he's gone from playing Reece James as a right side centre back to holding mid, so he clearly doesn't see him as a full back. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. In terms of whether I think he should keep his job next year, I don't think he ever should have got the job in the first place, personally. I was always quite jealous of the fact they brought Poch in. Not at the time, but like at one point in time, I would have loved to have just poached Poch, and I think I've said it in previous videos. I would love to have poached Poch from Spurs and just be like, look, we're taking him, bye. But obviously that's never going to happen. And I was very confident he'd do quite a good job at Chelsea, and I think it showed. And the thing is, I don't know what the board was expecting with Poch, because you're never going to get results straight away, especially with that many players in your squad. And he ended up getting a tune out of them, and if they'd stuck by him, I think they would have been a lot more comfortably in that top 4 this season, because he was starting to get a tune out of the players. I think the issue with Poch was that he wanted to keep Gallagher, he wanted to keep Chalobah, he wanted to keep who's the fourth? Who's another English player they sold on? I forget the other English player they sold on. But you get my point in terms of he wanted to keep that English core strong, and he wanted to keep some experience in the side. The board looked at it and went, nah, we need the profit so we can spend more money, so not going to work. So he goes, alright, cool, well, I'm not doing the job then. I'm not going to be working with kids the whole time, which he's happy to do as long as he has experience because I go along with him, I think, as it showed with his time in Tottenham, PSG and whatever have you. He's arguably the best manager in the world at bringing through young talent, and I don't think that's a huge statement to make. I think that's pretty explanatory really. I mean, you look what he's done with Spurs, and he brought through them. Basically every player there was a young player at the time, and he brought them all through. So he's definitely capable of bringing through young players. I just think that Chelsea were too power, like the owners had too much power in terms of what they wanted from him, and too unrealistic, and they were too business orientated, and they should have let him manage the team as a manager should. Now with Maresca, like I said, I don't think he should have got done in the first place. I thought he did really well at that shit at the start of the season with how things were going. I didn't necessarily agree with what he was doing on some aspects of his job, but who am I to like make a judgment on that? Now I look at it and I go, it's very dependent on how you finish the season, because if you only win 2 of your last 10, you don't come in European places, and you don't win the Conference League, I think you're gone. I think if he wins the Conference League and comes 7th, he might keep his job, because then they'll get Europa League. But I think they will win the Conference League. But I don't think that's still enough for a Chelsea manager to keep his job. I think they might keep him on because they can't change another manager, surely. I know that club is ran like that's how it's ran, but I just look at it and I go, you can't keep doing that. Like one season changing over, especially with so many young players in the team. Young players need stability and consistency. If they don't think they're going to get regular minutes, how are they ever going to like continue playing and playing to a higher level? Yeah, like, sorry guys, one sec, just focusing here. Yeah, like I was saying, young players need consistency, and if you're chopping and changing managers, they're going to have different styles, different positions they want the young players to play in. They're never going to settle into the team, and this whole business model they want to do will ultimately fail because they're not giving the young players an environment to go and succeed, which it's what they need. They need a healthy environment to develop. You look at Man United. The only young player to develop there or to come through is Mainu, and I could argue he hasn't developed since he's come through because it's just been chaos at that club. He hasn't had a basis to go off. And young player, touch on the young players aspect of it, part of the stability and the culture that they need to build is from these older players they need to have in this team. These guys get experience together, but they've not experienced anything good yet. It's similar, you could argue similar of Arsenal, but we've actually had winners on our side who we've got signed to try and take this team to the next level. We had all the young players in place. We went out and got Gabriel Jesus and Alexander Zinchenko, who are arguably now not good enough for our team, but at the time it raised everyone's game and it brought some know-how and experience to the squad. And had Gabriel Jesus stayed fit that first season he was here with us, I think we could have been looking at a league title, but we never know now, you know. So that's what I have to say on that. I think Maresca potentially loses his job. If I was Chelsea board, I'd probably give him another season. Not because I think he's necessarily the right man for the job, but first of all, I don't think there's that many top class managers out in the world of football right now. And secondly, I think you need to give these players some stability to see what they can actually do. Because while I don't necessarily agree that he's been an amazing manager for them, he has some ideas, and I think you give him the year, unless an exceptional manager or candidate comes up. Oh fucking hell, what am I doing? Yeah, unless an exceptional manager comes up, sorry guys about that, then I think you have to stick with him. Exceptional manager won't become available until after the World Cup, I don't think. So I think you have to wait until then, unless they fancy going for Erik ten Hag and open that can of worms. I think they're stuck. So that's my thoughts on it. I think they're stuck with him for a little bit longer. While I don't necessarily agree it's the correct manager for the job, I think it might benefit the club to actually keep him on and develop these young players more, as long as given they sign some experience to their squad. But anyway, thank you guys for coming along today. Let me just quickly make this turn nice and safely. Yeah, thank you guys for coming along today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you didn't, let me know what your thoughts were and why they differed, what I got wrong. I'm obviously not a Chelsea expert, but I like to think I can analyse the team a little bit, see what's going good for them. But yeah, thank you guys for coming along, and peace.